What's up, party people? This is Jude Mossberg from Facebook, Jude's Junk, Facebook comic book shop and YouTube channel. And a great post came up where someone's making fun of people that are telling them what they should or shouldn't buy. You've seen those, don't get the new reprints because they're not going to be worth anything in 20 years. And the guy's like, well, I just like it. It's foil. It's fun. I want to get it. Leave me alone. And I totally get that. Everybody should collect whatever you want. Um, I remember back in the 80s buying, and we didn't like comic book shops. We went to the newsstands, the bookstores. Nobody gave us a hard time there. But as little kids, you go into the comic book shop in the 80s, and it was filled with smoke, for one thing, and the guy over there is a fat biker, and he's smoking, and he was like mad at us kids coming in. We had money, but he didn't know that, and he just was like, "Get out of here!" Kind of treated us like that. So we didn't like the experience of LCSs back then, and obviously things have changed and they're clean. Back then, there used to be piles and piles of raw books in the corner, and there was no way to look through them, and nothing was labeled. And it was like, yeah, spend 6 hours and just look through everything, and I'm going to charge you whatever Overstreet says. But anyways, I digress. I do agree you should collect whatever you want. But in the post, I said a lot of us old guys want to give unsolicited advice on how to not repeat the mistakes we made. And that's foolish. It's like boomers trying to give you advice you don't want. Totally get it. But I thought it would be nice to articulate what a lot of us older guys are realizing. And as you go through your collecting cycle, I don't know if it's a young man, old man thing. I don't know if it's a time thing. The first 10 years, you have this view. Second 20 years, you have this view. Third 20 years, you have that view. I'm not really what it sure is, but I started in 1980. It's 2025. That's 45 years. So I have this progression of thought of what my goals were over time. In the beginning, I was a kid. I did it because it was something that was fun. Took up my time. I spent my whole allowance each week. I got $20 a week back in the 80s, and I spent every dime on comics, and that was kind of a lot. Rode my bike down to the little newsstand. I had a purpose. I had a goal. I had a hobby. And sure, there was some idea or view that I might make money in the future. I was actually wired that way. I didn't read all the comic books. I tried reading some I liked, some I didn't. But my very first comic book was Supergirl, The Daring New Adventures of Supergirl, #1, because my buddy that got me into it said, get the #1 issues. Those are going to be worth the most. So I went into it with a financial view. But I didn't sell them, so I didn't make any money, but I still kept buying them. And I had some idea that they might be worth something in the future. And then I wanted to get the whole runs. Everybody wants to get the whole runs. And anything with a one I'd get. Annual #1. Oh, great. Not realizing that that's not really a thing as far as a key, So it was great. It was something that took me out of the difficult home I grew up in. It was a hobby. It was fun. I liked the artwork. I was an artist in high school. I was mostly ceramics, not really, pen and ink or pencils or anything, but mostly ceramics. But I was still an art. I appreciated certain covers. A lot of covers I have today are just ones I saw on the newsstand and said, "Ooh, that's cool. I want that." 230-ish, issue number 232, no key that I knew of at the time. We didn't have Key Collector. Maybe if you did a lot of research, you found out a new character was coming out, but me and my buddies, I don't know if we did that kind of research. So we didn't know what a key was. We just grabbed every single issue. That was the goal, every single X-Men issue, hoping one of them is going to be a key out of, number 160 to 200. So you buy 40 books at, 99 cents, $40, and you hope one or two hit, and you make your money back, right? So you collect, you buy, and then you get into independence. And very early on, one of the mistakes I made is not knowing how to take care of the books. Didn't even have bags and boards in the beginning. Just had a stack over in the corner. I remember I have one of my Supergirl comic books. Supergirl was the stupidest book, but I bought it thinking it was my first. I put a glass on, and the water ring is around it. It's probably worth a 4.0 now. But I started putting them in bags, and that was great. But I didn't have the money to put them in boards. And so a lot of my books stayed in those long boxes, just a bag, no board. And that would be one of my lessons I learned is Spend more to take care of your comics. Get the bags, get the boards, maybe replace bags and boards. When I started going through my bags and boards back in 2021, some of the old tape from the 80s that might have been on there from the 70s was starting to melt and stick to the other bags. So change your bags and boards on a somewhat regular basis, but keep them in good condition. So one thing I did do right is I stored them in a safe condition where they were dry, where they were safe. Phoenix really wasn't that dry, but I think I had it at my house, not in a storage shed. Other places were in storage sheds and it was probably too hot, but that would be something I would go back and fix, because the TMNTs, the original first print TMNTs, they didn't fit in a bag. They didn't fit in the long boxes. So where did I have them? In some box, laying flat with other junk on top of them with some plastic around them. Luckily, a number 3 came back in 9.8, but a lot of them, 7.5, 8.0, that kind of stuff, just didn't take good care. So that's one big lesson I learned, is take better care of them. Why? If you're just going to read them. Well, you could make that argument, but if you hold on to something for 40, 50 years and you're excited because you have that number 1 issue, and then you find out it lost all that value because you didn't take care of it because you were lazy, that kind of stings, later on down the road when you do go to want to sell it. And that's the thing. The other big lesson is, when you get older, do I really want to die and have all these things go to my kids? In some cases, kids grow up and they love them and they'd like that. And that's great if you have those kind of kids. I don't have those kind of kids. My son, I have a 30-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. My 7-year-old son might be interested. As he gets older, I'll figure that out. But if he's not, I'm going to try to liquidate for him. And if he is interested, then I can liquidate a lot of the small stuff and leave him the big ones. And so as you get older, what am I going to do with all these books? Where am I going to store them? Do I just leave them in the back room and just go into my twilight years and let someone else take care of them? I guess there could be some satisfaction to some collectors in that they're going to have to go through these. They probably won't if they're all raws, even from the 30s or 40s. They're going to bring someone in, especially if you've ever seen those guys with 30, 40, 50,000 comic books. They're not going to go through all those and enjoy and be forced to enjoy what you enjoy. They're going to hire somebody who's a dealer and is going to come in and try to buy them cheap and turn around and sell them high. Like that big collection that Comic Tom and his buddy, the Guru, went through. Or you sell it to an estate sale or Heritage and just let them figure it out, or somebody else who goes out and grades some of them and then auctions them away. So I did another video on how you could liquidate, so I'm not going to go into that. But these are the lessons that some of us, not just older, but guys that have been collecting longer, might have learned over time. 1, take care of the comic books better. If you don't care and you just want to read them and read them and read them and you don't care the condition, I get it. That's a totally different world than my mindset. I get it, but I don't get it. Get it? If that's your thing and you really don't care about value at all, and I guess that is a bigger portion of the community. They love the stories. And for me, it's been more about the art. It's been that way for years. And that's why the big companies changed in the 90s to focus on art versus the stories of the 80s. The Chris Claremonts, the Neil Gaimans, the Alan Moores of the 80s, great stories. The 90s, we went into, flashy covers and Todd McFarlane covers and buy everything Todd McFarlane, but you don't read it because he's not a good writer, That's what everyone said about early Spawn. Some people might like it, but if you're into just collecting for reading, then you might want to chat with someone who's an older collector that bought them just for reading, because maybe he has other things. Maybe he just gave them away so someone else can read them, give them away to his school or something like that. I was always into it, thinking somewhere down the line I might be able to recover an investment. And that might be rare, because I was thinking that way ever since I was 10 years old. So as I got older, liquidating comic books becomes a really hard thing to do. We didn't have grading in the 80s and 90s. Well, now we have grading, and grading helps you liquidate. You can put up a 7.5 key on Heritage, and everybody has a general idea what it's worth. If I put up a 7.5 raw, I got to put up 10 pictures front and back, because a lot of people are going to be saying, can I press it? Can I clean it? And they want to see the creases. 10 pictures. You're doing a lot of work for a $20 book. Do you want to do that much work to sell a $20 book, or the work I do to sell an $18,000 book is the same thing? Just talked with a client overseas who bought my TMNT #1, double signed by Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman. It's 18 grand. And the work to market that book, to put it online, is the same as to market a $2 book. And so my time is valuable, especially as you get older. Do you want to be running around selling a lot of raws? Some people love it. I do love going through my old books and selling them. I thought it would be painful, but now I'm like, get rid of all my raws. I don't want any more raws. I got 7,000 raws I got to go through. I've already, cherry picked all the expensive ones and graded them and sold them and bought more graded. Any case, what are some of the lessons you would like to pass on to the new collectors or younger collectors that were life lessons that you wish someone told you when you were young? Happy hunting, guys.